Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with Audrey Helps Actors Podcast, and this is episode number 79. Wishing you had more time on your self-tapes that you got 2 hours ago and is due in 2 more hours. Pew, 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 pew. It's a lot out there, everybody. It is a lot. I hope you are practicing your self-care. I'm so happy about the feedback that we got from last week's episode. The magnificent Marissa. It seems like it is exactly what everybody was needing. It's what I need. I'm basically doing these episodes like, what does Audrey want? And then, I'm just hoping that's also what you want. That's my strategy. I know that I told you you're going to have the therapist episode today. I accidentally lied to you. That episode just took a little more time getting beautiful for you. And so we have this incredible episode, which is also about self-care. What do you need to do to stay passionate, to keep the furnace burning in the entire process of building your career, the lifelong process of building your career? So we talk with the incredible Towne, Towne, and we talk a lot about, the dream versus the reality of the business, and then really reframing how you look at success and progress in your career. That's going to be different for you than for somebody else. It's part of why I added a new question this year. What does success look like to you? Or what does success mean to you right now? Because it's different for everybody at different times in your journey. And we talk about my favorite subject, OMG, mastery. I love mastery. Oh my God, it makes me so excited. My intention for this season is to help everyone have a career that is nourishing, a relationship with an art and career that is nourishing to themselves, not depleting. So also, Market Research March, we're wrapping it up here. I've been getting so many tags of everyone who's really researching the shows that are shooting in their market. Again, that is posted on my Instagram. I've got New York, Los Angeles, and Georgia on there. Shout out to a few of the New Mexico actors who are so wonderful and gave me some little hidden passageways to finding out what is currently filming and shooting in New Mexico. So I will put that together for you all, and I will post that as soon as possible. You guys, I've been busy. I've been auditioning all the time. So as soon as I get a little break, I will post that for you all. So thank you for your patience. We're getting ready for Self-Tape May, everybody. Self-Tape May 2022, coming at you. I love Self-Tape May. I love you all, and I love you all participating in Self-Tape May. It's gonna blow up. I mean, it's already blown up, but it is gonna be massive this year. So if any of your friends are like, what is Self-Tape May? You can just tell them, go on to selftapemay.com, and you'll have just like a little video that'll explain what it is and how to participate. Self-Tape May is free. It's 100% free. I'm passionate about things that are free. Thanks so much to everyone who left us some reviews. I'm gonna like shout you guys out next week just because this intro's long. This episode is sponsored by Jeff Pride at Self-Tapes Here. OMG, Jeff Pride at Self-Tapes Here. You guys, I have something for you about how much everyone loves Jeff. You're gonna be really excited. If you want some self-tape help, Jeff is so good. Jeff Pride at Self-Tapes Here on Instagram. It's also brought to you by the incredible Carla Zuniga at Carla Zuniga Hair on Instagram. She is a hair wizard. Everyone who goes to Carla, everyone loves Carla. Carla's incredible. Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. That's Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. Don't be fooled by the name. Anything you need to work on in your voice, Greg is here for you, virtually, in person. He's fantastic. All right. I hope that you are editing your self-tape, that you are sending in easily before the deadline because the character just fits so great on you, and you just feel so easy and great about it, and that you book it. Book it! Book it! Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Moore with Audrey Helps Actors podcast, and today we have...
Joe Towne. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, honey.
Joe Towne with an E, everybody. Just everybody know.
With an E.
I'm so glad that you are here today, and I was doing research on everything this morning so that we could really thoroughly talk about stuff. And I'm just really excited about the conversation I think that we're going to have, because it's in alignment with a lot of what I'm talking about this season. My intention today is really to talk about growth and to talk about getting yourself set up for growth. And you are an actor, a producer, a writer, a podcast host of your own right, and you are really excited and passionate about growth and improvement and the science and the psychiatry behind all of those things. And I'm just really excited to get into it. So tell everyone, what's your landscape look like? Are you union? Do you audition? Do you create? What are you creating for? You know, those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm just really excited for the conversation too, and I appreciate you having me on. I am union. I've been union member for, looks like 20 years now. Very fortunate to be a part of this union. And I am in a very interesting place where I feel like I sometimes walk between worlds, in that being mindful of my energy and time, being a young dad, and also with the ever-changing landscape of our industry, there are aspects that I have sort of scaled back from in terms of auditioning. And there are parts that I'm still very much a part of. So I really love the fact that we can create our own material. And I think it's vital for us to be creating our own material. And so there's sort of a longer view in terms of focusing all energies towards that. Mm-hmm. And I think what that's meant is that sometimes I've been given an audition request and I've noticed a big old ugh that comes up around it. And sometimes that has been around driving, across town at a certain time and adjusting all of the things that we have to go through. And sometimes it's been about, I feel like I've played that role before, and I'm interested in what other stories we can collectively tell. Really actor, creator, and coach are the three landscapes that I spend the most time.
I really love that. One thing that I'm always talking to actors about is, the dream that you had at 16 versus the dream you have 20 years later. Like, of course, that should be different. That just sounds healthy. That sounds like growing up. And I think a lot of people have the idea of what they were going to be and become and pursue at 16. And then life circumstance changes. You get married, you have kids, you grow your interests like a human being might do. And then this thing that was kind of narrow and also not real because it was a dream. And so what you were dreaming it to be is also something you discover is very different from what the actual job of it is. And people start to understand the discrepancy of that and then feel a little frustration and a little shock, and then having to manage ego and redirection. And so you talk about a lot of that in a lot of the work you do in addition to acting. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I love that you're having that conversation because, first of all, it starts with a dream. And for me, my dream started super young. I wanted to be in the box. I wanted to be on the screen. And I knew that I wanted to play and I wanted to be part of a community that were telling stories. Beyond that, it really was a longer process. It was in my more teenage years that I actually started training to be an actor. I think between then, I may have had a quick sojourn where I thought professional baseball player. But I think that the idea was originally theater. That's my love was in the theater. I grew up in New York, and I was fairly fortunate to be at a school that invested into the arts, and I did so many plays before a certain age. And I don't really remember having specific fantasies about Broadway. I just had fantasies about like Circle in the Square, which is, off Broadway and is certainly in that realm, but being surrounded by faces, getting to be in the mix, getting to create theater. And on some level, I feel like I got to do that. Maybe not at Circle in the Square itself, But between getting to perform in Paris and getting to perform at the Edinburgh Festival multiple times and doing plays in Los Angeles and Colorado and New York, I feel like I got to have the spirit of that experience. Mm-hmm. And then the dream was, okay, now I want to do TV and film. And for me, it was primarily film. It wasn't really a thought about television. I think I had my nose up in the air about TV because I think at that time, TV looked so different from the way it does now. And the types of people that I found myself drawn to were movie stars and Broadway actors. And I think now it's all so blurry. And, as you know, you get to work with them on episodic television. The other aspect of your question, which feels important to acknowledge, is like, let's say my dream was originally to be able to work with a certain level of movie star or actor on Broadway. Mm-hmm. There's a pain that comes from the gap between here and there. And I think over time, I start to realize, like, I'm not even auditioning for some of those projects. And I've always been told this sort of sequential order. Like, my first agents out here in LA were very clear that even though my dream was film, that I needed to do television first. There was like a sequence, like you do this and you build up to this. You start with co-stars, you move to guest stars, then you can be. And I've always had a little bit of perhaps still hope/delusion that it's possible that there's some magic and you can be plucked and discovered in a different way and you can leapfrog and things will work out in a different way. And to some degree, that magic has really served me. And at other times when I don't feel connected to that flow, I have felt a tremendous amount of pain, like I'm not making progress. And I don't know how to navigate where I am in this system that is evolving and changing and where do I fit? So I've had a lot of dark nights of the soul about that.
I mean, that's just what I love so much about this podcast is the getting real on those things. One of the things that is an impetus for this podcast is everyone gets on and does podcasts and is like selling. They're doing so much sell of like, here's this movie I did, or here's this TV show I did. And everything was great. And it was great. And the director was great. And we just had like the best time creating. And, just even in terms of audience too, like we're hungry, I think, for more authentic communication. And I think people are tired of feeling bad about themselves and feeling isolated and feeling bad about themselves. And instead of understanding that, the growth process is going to have a lot of dark night of the soul, like that's part of it. And a lot of becoming is partly letting go of what your idea of what you were or what you thought you were going to become or really what it was going to look like. And not just in our profession, but I talked to therapists who realize like they're kind of schedule juggler makers and insurance accountants. And they're doing these things that had nothing to do with the thing they wanted to sign up for. And I think people are like kind of frustrated by the horrifying jolts that is a consistent process of getting woken up to like, oh, it's this. Oh, I see, it's this. Oh, shit, now it's this. And a constant reassessing is my experience. What's yours?
I love that so much. I love so much of what you just named because the idea that people are tired of feeling bad about themselves and the idea of that compare and despair that comes up. But also it's potentially systematic, right? If people are looking on Instagram and only seeing the highlight reels of people's lives, they aren't experiencing the vulnerability and the conversations happening behind the scenes that might have just happened between the photo of the Christmas family and the meltdown that happened just before, the frustration that happened after. And I think people are hungry for growth. And I'm hopeful, I love the spirit of why you started this. The idea of helping is in there. And so I'm really excited about all of these layers coming together and the idea of we can share resources and we can share tools to make people feel more connected, less alone, and a little more hopeful towards progress and growth.
Oh my God, I love it. So let's talk resources and tools. So one of the things that I think is really shocking to people and that you talk about on your podcast, on Instagram, on all your platforms is the resilience factor and that you really do have to focus on what do you need? What are things that you're experiencing that are getting in the way of your growth? And also that you get to the next place of growth. And especially in our industry, you make the horrific discovery that it didn't get easier. So tell everyone a little bit about your thought process in that the leveling up gets more complicated, more challenging, and faster, and just all the setup that occurs.
That's so great. And there's maybe two threads in there I'd love to pull on. The first one is, like video games, there's a parallel to martial arts. And the idea is that when you complete a level, maybe and get a belt, you test for a belt, you don't move on from the lessons that were part of that first belt training. At level 2, you have to do level 1 again and also add in level 2. And then at level 3, you have to do level 1 again and level 2 and level 3. So I think so often I've been having this image from a bird's eye view, and I look down at somebody walking on a glass spiral staircase. It looks like I'm walking in circles. Yeah. And so I'm like, here I am again. Why am I here? I've fallen back. I'm not getting anywhere. But if I shift my perspective to a ground view and I look at somebody walking in a glass spiral staircase, I'll notice that there is progress. And I'll notice that I am moving up levels. I've just had a different perspective. So I may need to reframe how I'm looking at things. The other thing you mentioned is this idea of competition. I know there's a meme that's going around that's like, art is not sport. There is no winner and things like that. And I really appreciate the spirit of the meme.
Well said.
There's this other definition of competition that I would love to include in our conversation.
Let's do it.
The French definition is this besting one's opponent, the idea of a zero-sum game. You win, I lose. The Latin definition, the ancient definition of competition, which I discovered through sport, is the idea that we all are striving together towards a common goal and that we make each other better. So when you go up against someone with more credits, what does that bring forth in you as opposed to what is it taking away from you? And I think that that challenge versus threat mindset is a real deal thing. When we look at we have resources or identity and it can be taken from us, then we feel threatened. And it changes the way our brains work. It changes our biology. It changes the resources we have inside of us to do our job on the day, like recall lines and be present and manage nerves. But when we feel challenged, it brings something forth in us. And this phrase, iron sharpens iron, is thrown around a lot because I'll hear people that always see the same people in the audition room. And if they really reframe what the opportunity is and they understand the assignment, then they know that nobody can take away what you can bring. Nobody can take away your own relationship to your growth. Nobody can take away what you do well. It's only when we start putting ourselves into the mind of the decision makers, like the casting director or the producer or the director, and we think about them, imagine them comparing resumes, we start to feel maybe a little less than. And so why are we doing that? Because we can't control that. So the main thing that I think artists can learn from athletes is to control what we can control and let go of the rest and focus on growth and improvement over time.
I just love so much of what you said. And I also want to just say, yeah, we on this podcast all the time compare the like Los Angeles or these major markets to the Olympics. And one thing that I'm always telling people is if somebody comes on for like a leveling up episode and I say, okay, so if you're an agent tomorrow, how much money are you investing into your agency to have growth as an agent? And they're like, oh my God, that sounds so expensive. And I'm like, well, how expensive is it? And they're like, I don't know. Usually the answer is like anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000, depending on how much they know, right? And then I'm like, and how much is it for you to live a month? And let's say it's like $3,000. And I'm like, okay, so if it's $2,000 to invest in your agency and then $3,000 to just live, then let's say $5,000 a month is what you need to like have a working business as an agent. And so that's like, you need your actors to be giving you $50,000 a month so that you can just pay your bills and start to maintain your agency. And how many actors you need to do that? And what does an actor even need in order to contribute meaningfully to the $50,000 a month? And then I'm like, if you're going to grow your agent business, like how much time are you putting in to the agent's business? And they're like, wow, God, I mean, like 60 hours. They're just like, think, well, that would be crazy. Like if I'm going to try and be an agent, that sounds so competitive. That sounds so exhausting. And I would have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time to really compete and make people's careers happen as an agent. And I'm like, awesome. How much money are you spending on your acting career in a given month? And they're like, 300. I'm like, great. And how much time are you spending on acting in a given week? And they're like, well, I have class twice a week, and sometimes I rehearse outside of that. And they're like, I say like 10 hours. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, right. So what do you think agent you thinks about actor you? If agent you is spending $2,000 plus 60 hours a week into growing this business, and actor you is spending $300 plus maybe 10 to 15 hours, and that's generous. I think a lot of people aren't even doing that, 10 to 15 hours a week on this business. And they're like, I think I would think like that's cute. But then we get into my thing that I would love to talk to you about, which is infrastructure and resources for growth. Because for a lot of people, what's so devastating about that realization is that they simply don't have the ability to invest $2,000 a month into their acting career and 60 hours a week into their acting career. And that sounds fucking beautiful to them. They're like, wow, if I could spend $2,000 in that and I could spend 60 hours a week, then that would be awesome. So it's almost like this sort of delusion thing that we were talking about earlier of like being the plucked out is kind of what I'd say a majority of actors are really banking on. Because when they look at the actual infrastructure that they have available to them in terms of resources of time, energy, and money, they don't have it. I argue then it's going to go slower. It's just going to go slower. If you have less resources, you can't go as fast, possibly, as someone who does. And what's beautiful is the lottery does happen. You can be plucked out. You can be going along as well as you can be going along, and then you could do an audition, and somebody could see it, and somebody else could see it, and then boom, that's it.
There's so many things in here that I'm hearing.
But wait, Joe. Wait. You mad genius, you. I have to interrupt you.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you shit you didn't know about your union.
This shit you don't know about your union is brought to you by Carla Zuniga Hair on Instagram at Carla Zuniga Hair, CarlaZunigaHair, Carla Zuniga Hair. Carla is amazing. If you're looking for somebody who can give you a versatile cut, male, female, a haircut that can do a lot of different looks. My casting, I need a lot of versatile looks because I have a lot of different casting genres I do, also different time periods that I do. And Carla is so fantastic. She even helps me with my bang pieces, my wigs, fake hair, don't care. And she is fantastic. Find her on Carla Zuniga Hair on Instagram. So for this shit you don't know about your union, I have my dear friends, Katie Von Till and Mike Nelson, who are amazing booking actors involved in the union, and they are going to tell you just a little bit about our landscape right now and some shit you don't know about your union. They are two of my most favorite people, so enjoy.
On a very special shit you don't know about your union. Oh, hey, Mike.
Hey, KBT.
Did you know that according to the National Institute of Mental Health, about 1 in 5 Americans are navigating some kind of mental health issue?
Yeah, I'm one of those 1 in 5 people. Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Me too. And I'm sure that the past few years haven't helped those numbers.
I imagine not.
The good news for us performers is that there are various mental health resources specifically available to our community.
That sounds great. Like what?
Well, for starters, did you know that SAG-AFTRA health insurance covers a wide range of mental health and substance abuse treatments?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But help me out. What kind of concerns do they address? Because I just know, me, personally, I've been feeling a lot more anxious these days.
Me too. Well, look, treatment is available for everyday life challenges like anxiety, stress, and anger management, eating disorders, depression, all the way to the more serious mental health concerns. They've even partnered with a telemedicine company that lets us talk by video with a state-licensed therapist or board-certified psychiatrist when you or your family needs care.
Wow. That sounds really, really good.
It is.
However, what about those of us who don't have SAG-AFTRA health insurance right now?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because additional mental health resources may be available through the Actors Fund.
The Actors Fund?
Yeah. According to their website, any performing arts or entertainment professional may call the Actors Fund for mental health support, information, or referrals to community agencies.
That sounds like an incredible resource.
It really is. They even have supportive workshops, including music therapy, support groups for caregivers, mindfulness and meditation workshops.
Hot damn. How can folks find out if they qualify?
Okay, well, they should check out their website at actorsfund.org. That's actorsfund.org.
I'm on it. Thanks, KBT. I really think a lot of people could benefit from these resources.
Yeah, I think so too. None of us knows what we're each carrying inside. So remember, everyone, be kind to each other and be gentle with yourself.
It's been a lot, hasn't it?
It really has.
You want to hug it out?
Let's do it.
Ugh. That feels great.
Oh, so good.
You're the best.
You are.
I'm never letting go.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Jeff Pride at Self Tapes here on Instagram. And I don't need to be the person that tells you how great Jeff is. Instead, I'm going to give you a listener who sent me a little voice memo who went and worked with Jeff for the first time this last week.
Audrey, so this guy Jeff's next level, huh? That was like the most fun I had in an audition in my entire life. Thanks once again for the recommendation. Like, I didn't think it was going to be like that.
So, you know, he's great. Jeff Pride at Self Tapes here on Instagram. Okay, this isn't actually a listener question. This is like I'm tricking you. This is an account from somebody who read their checks and found money. You guys know I'm always talking like it's tax season. You got to find your checks. You got to actually add up your checks to the amount that then the IRS said you made. And if there's a discrepancy, that means that you didn't get some of your checks. Could be payroll, could be your representation, could be all kinds of people, but you need to get your money. So here is a great example of somebody who got their money, and I'm so happy about it.
Hey, Audrey, calling from Los Angeles with a little story related to counting your paychecks. That's actually something I learned from one of the episodes, and I wanted to share the information with your listeners just to empower people to really keep track of their money. So my commercial agent, who I recently just finally had the courage to leave, would take a long time to pay me. But of course, being a new baby to SAG, I wasn't sure how long was standard. So when my W-2 came around, I noticed that there was a pretty big discrepancy between what the W-2 said I made versus what I actually received in my bank. So another red flag for this agency is they never sent me my pay stubs. If I ever wanted a pay stub, I would have to ask for it, which I highly encourage anyone to do. The reason being is without your pay stubs, you can't see how much you're supposed to be making, and you just kind of have to trust that whatever goes into your account via direct deposit is what you're owed. So after noticing that discrepancy on my W-2, I saw the payroll company listed on the W-2. I called them because I knew that that was a thing you could do after hearing it on the podcast. Otherwise, how would I have known? Turns out the payroll company was actually able to send me all my pay stubs very easily, and I literally printed them all out. I immediately noticed there was a discrepancy, but it was hard to tell exactly how much. So don't be afraid to literally sit down with a calculator, a highlighter, and a pencil, which is what I had to do. Go through each of my paychecks and figure out exactly how much I was owed. I even asked my boyfriend to take a look at it so I could have a second set of eyes because I was so floored by the fact that I was owed $2,000 extra that were missing that my agency just never paid me. So, of course, there's two options. You can always just go directly to SAG and have them deal with it. But I didn't want to take it to that level until I absolutely needed to. And I said, let me try emailing my agency first, as I've had to do in the past for paychecks that are late. So I simply emailed them. I said, hey, there's a discrepancy with my W-2. I was hoping you could help me figure out, from my calculations, there should be this amount missing. And I was fully ready to back it up with all the proof. But I was like, let me play it cool and see. Sure enough, within a week, they turned around and were like, so sorry. Yeah, it turns out there was a check that was missing and it didn't have your name on it. Whatever the story is, I got my money. I dumped their asses and I moved on. So I just wanted to say thanks for the advice. I empower other actors to always advocate for themselves. And most importantly, count your paychecks because you could be missing out on rent money. Bye.
Woo, woo! If that's not the best ever, I love you, babe. I know who this is. And I just want to say, yes, yes, yes. I did the same when I was at the same place in my career with a long gone agent, and I was missing $4,000. So yeah, lots of red flags. If you're not getting your pay stubs, flag, red flag, everyone. And when she says call the payroll company, I just want you to know it may sound intimidating, but it's not. You literally can just know who the payroll company is. Usually it's like entertainment partners. You can call the production company on your call sheet if you're not getting your W-2s and ask them to tell you who the payroll company is that's handling that commercial or that episode or whatever it is, handles their account. And then literally you just email them and you say, hey, can I get a copy of all of my checks from this job? Will you email me a copy? And they will, in like a week, sometimes like a day, they will email because they've already scanned all of them. They have them all scanned. They just send you all of them in one thing and then you print them. And exactly what she's saying, you go through them. It takes I think it took me like an hour and a half. So in an hour and a half, I made $4,000. In an hour and a half, she made $2,000. $2,000, you guys. And more than anything, it showed her that she needed to leave her rep because they were not probably being as above board. I mean, listen, they're not sending the pay stubs. I just can't with that. As they should be. And that's given her the courage and the push to go get the better rep, which she's getting, which will then have so much compounding money for her because she'll audition more, book more jobs, make more money, and get paid more. So yes, 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 yes.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
There's so many things in here that I'm hearing. One of them is you're inviting people to consider a perspective other than their own. Mm-hmm. You're putting yourselves into somebody else's shoes. You're also really helping people understand what it means to be a good collaborator. And the origin of the word competition is actually very similar to the origin of the word collaborator.
Oh, interesting. Tell me all about it.
It's to strive together towards a common goal and hopefully to help improve a system and make it better. So if we are collaborating with our agents, then we need to know what value we're adding. That's really what it comes down to, I think. First, organizing our life around growth and saying that it matters to us and doing small wins on a consistent level. Because you hear about athletes, Kobe Bryant didn't wait for his coaches to tell him what to work on. Kobe Bryant had a hunger, and it came from pain, by the way. So he lived overseas in Europe and he came back to Pennsylvania and he tried out for this summer league. And there were kids that were older that had mustaches and a ton of muscles. And he looked at them and said, I'm not going to win today. And so he played that whole summer and he scored 0 points. I don't mean he scored 0 points in a game. He scored 0 points in the whole summer.
That season. And
so he had a conversation with his dad and his dad said, whether you score 60 points or 0 points, I'm going to love you just the same. And so he went to work and he got up an hour before everyone else, just 1 hour. And he worked on one thing for maybe 30 days and got better at, let's say, footwork or rebounding or watching game tape. He studied posters of superstars to break down their game and learn from it. So I think that part of this for us is getting 1% better over time, valuing that growth. And the other thing is figuring out, you've asked these questions of actors and they don't have a clear answer. What are you doing to work on your acting? They're waiting for something to happen. They're waiting for rehearsal, waiting for the audition. And so what are we doing to foster our own growth and curiosity and interest? And how do we measure whether we're improving? So I think there's a before and after that is an invitation for us. You've asked these questions of actors and they don't have a clear answer. What are you doing to work on your acting? They're waiting for something to happen. They're waiting for rehearsal, waiting for the audition. And so what are we doing to foster our own growth and curiosity and interest? And how do we measure whether we're improving? So I think there's a before and after that is an invitation for us. You know Hillary Tuck because we've had some conversations.
Oh, we love
together.
Hillary. Hillary and I are deeply in love.
Yes. And
we love Hillary.
Samesies. And I jokingly call her my work wife because she and I came together and created multiple programs to try to help actors first around auditioning and then around mindset. And the idea for us was we don't have as much time anymore, partly because of the way the industry has changed. We have less time to turn things around, partly with our lives and the things we are committed to, like our well-being and our families. So we are not willing to sacrifice quality. What then can we do to be more efficient?
Great. So you're talking about resources of time, energy, and money. And something that people will discover as they get older is that it's interesting. It's like when you're 25, truly, like, let's just be broke and hang out, right? Let's just all be broke and let's hang out. And that's great. And then I know a lot of my male actor friends, they begin dating and they want to date, like, there's certain women they want to date and they feel like, I can't just be the broke waiter anymore. It's not cute or cool anymore. So then their realization of some things that they need to start bringing to the table changes. I know for a lot of people, it's like, when you're like pursuing your dreams and then everyone else goes and gets the corporate job, but you're like in your 20s and you're just living like this young, sexy, cool life. And then suddenly you're not as young, sexy, cool anymore. And your friends who went and got the corporate life are now rich and are getting vacations, paid time off. They're getting, they have these huge houses and they're having these kids. And so you're sort of like, you just, again, start to reevaluate what's happening. And a lot of the people listening are people who are in all age groups. We get people who are second act actors. And yes, your time becomes more valuable. And how you spend it so that it is capitalized starts to become of interest.
I love these two threads you keep bringing up, which is that we have time and we need to invest our resources, both energy and our finances, because we may need to first reframe what cost means. Some people just look at these things as an expense. Other people look at them as an investment. So if we look at this as an investment into ourselves, into our business, those compound. And if we don't have financial resources, then we do have to make it up with time.
And energy.
Yeah, right. And so we're really interested in how do we maximize that? How do we maximize our time? Because sometimes we may find ourselves like, I don't want to compromise my screen time. I'm watching shows and it's educating me as an actor. But if that happens for 3 hours at the end of the day, and we're also scrolling and looking at other things before bed, we might need a reality check. How are we doing time management? We might need to get up an hour earlier. And yes, that means we might be tired. But I realized this last year, Audrey, when I was really noticing that when other people were doing team sourdough and baking sourdough breads, I was in like late night binging and snacks. Like I was really into truffle chips and I was watching all of the shows and they were making me feel good temporarily. But I wasn't liking the way I was feeling in my body and my skin. I wasn't liking my energy levels. And I had to do a reality check where I had to just get up earlier, get stuff done in the quiet. I had to get my meditation done. I had to get some of my emailing done. I had to do some thinking and lists. And I needed to get out in advance of my day instead of just reacting like a fire drill. Yes. And so then I was more tired at the end of the day. And so I would go to bed earlier, but then I wasn't snacking because the snacking was in an effort to try to have enough energy to make it through my show. I wasn't willing to give up the comforting thing and I had to get uncomfortable. So what is our relationship to discomfort? And what is our relationship to how we've always done it? Whether it comes to how we break down scripts, whether it comes to how we tape things, who we tape with.
Yeah. And my favorite thing is it working?
Is it working?
I was talking to one of my best friends and coaches about this the other day about how we have these things like, well, I tried that. Yeah, I tried that. And then it's like, okay, well, what was that? And how long did you try that for? And did you give it an honest go? Or where were you when you quote unquote tried that?
Yes.
And maybe in trying that now, you're in a different place.
Love it.
And it really makes me think about these times, which athletes do, right? What's so great about athletics is like you can really measure results.
Yeah.
You can run faster. You can get more hits in football. Like you can really, they're little points that tell you how you're doing, how you're operating individually, how you're operating as a team. And so you can reevaluate those things. And that's why I'm so interested in actors tracking their auditions, tracking their statistics, tracking what's happening, because if you were a business constantly trying to sell your product, you would be seeing what's working. Do relationships get me the most jobs, or do auditions with strangers get me the most jobs? Because some people are one or the other, and some people are both. But like, if you really get a lot of jobs by performing for people that have never seen you before, then maybe that's what you need to focus on. And if you are really getting great work out of relationships and people who meet you and love you, give you opportunities, then you should focus and prioritize that in the coming quarter, in the coming year.
I love that. And I wonder if also we need to really have some self-awareness about not just leaning into our strengths, but also identifying where are some of the blind spots that we've had. And so who are the people that give us clear feedback loops on those things?
Because that's so big. Because how can you find out what your blind spots are? And how can you find people that you can trust that are qualified to help you see your blind spots? And a really good quick example is a friend of mine is an actress in New York, and she was talking about getting some headshots because she's so funny. And she said, you know, this casting director that I met with 2 years ago, come to find out, told me that I had a real propensity to humor. I have a good comedic way about me. And I was just like, well, there's 5 comedies shooting in New York City. So I don't know that that is helpful. Like, and it may be true. It may be absolutely true. But if a person is going to just take, which is so common for actors, like anybody who seems to show any little light bulb because this 1% a day or 1% a week feels so slow, and that it's so easy for actors in the compare and despair game to see somebody else that's booking, and then you all have a reality on that that's not real, or they make up a story that's not real about how great they're doing. And then they start going back into like their encyclopedia of things that random people have told them. And this cast director 2 years ago told me I was like great at comedy. So now I'm going to go and turn my whole ship around to do comedy when it's maybe logistically speaking not the most viable option given the market that I'm in. So how do actors do that?
I'm hearing so many threads in there. One is we get feedback and we don't know what to do with it. We may have to contextualize it, right? To say, in that case, you're saying that's interesting information. So I always want to start with that's interesting information. Is there something I want to do with that piece of information, which is, does it pertain to the environment I'm in? That's one thing. The other thing is this, it's about relationships. The relationships with people that we cultivate trust with. The person who's going to tell us the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. The coach, the teacher, the friend, the therapist, the person who's going to tell us things that we need to hear, and we need to have the desire to seek them out and not deflect them and have cognitive dissonance and push it away and say, I'm trying to protect my identity here. Because proving ourselves and protecting our identity is the opposite of growth. We need to humble ourselves, and we need to be vulnerable and be willing to hear uncomfortable feedback in order to grow. So to me, growth comes from having 2 qualities, both support and challenge. We all know those teachers in the acting space and those coaches that we probably imagine on the sidelines with the stogies who will be willing to tear us down. We also know that there are loving humans who will just love on us no matter what, and they'll never tell us an unkind thing. They will yes us and love us, and that's wonderful. But growth comes when we have a balance of the 2. So are there people that are willing to both support and challenge us? The other thing is an internal and an external relationship. We need to have relationships where people are willing to give us information. We also have to have a good internal gauge on whether or not we agree with the information, whether we want to act on it. And I know that it took time for me to differentiate that stings, but it's true, from just pushing it off because I don't want to deal with it. And that takes some lonely work. That takes some really sitting and getting quiet and reflection. Yeah.
Yeah. It also makes me think about how writers work when they get a script. You know, writers don't just give it to a person and then go, those are the notes. Great. Let me go change it. They actually give it to a select, but a handful of people. And what they're really looking for is, you're married to a writer, I'm married to a writer. They are looking for anything that's consistent. So do they hear from all 5 people, you know, your just lead is just, I see what you're doing, but she's kind of annoying. Like, I'm not rooting for her. And that's a really valuable note if all 5 people have given it to you, rather than what I think happens to a lot of actors at any stage is idealizing anyone and their particular point of view as like having the answers, and then hook, line, and sinker, giving them all of the trust, and then going, whatever they say to do, they're going to like solve your career. And I see that happen with headshots. They're like, this headshot photographer, because my friend shot with them and then they started working, I'm going to go shoot with that headshot photographer, as though that's a good fit, that's the right answer, that's any of that, as opposed to go and seek out information from qualified people about whatever problem you're trying to solve and see if you can get a consensus. What is the consistent feedback that you're getting? If you were an athlete and you had 5 different coaches because you were really trying to improve something, and all 5 coaches were to say, you know what, you really need to work on your breath. Like, you are hyperventilating, and because of that, you're slowing down at the end. First of all, you wouldn't just go ask anybody who says that they're a coach. You would ask people who have a proven track record of this thing that you're trying to get better at. And if you can ask multiple people and get a consistent consensus of what that feedback is, then you have something to target. Then you can focus on improvement.
That's right. And some people listening may have watched that show, The Newsroom. And there was an episode where they wanted to run a story and they needed to call in the red team, right? People that didn't know anything about the story previously, didn't have any preconceived notions. They pitched the idea for the story, and the idea of the other person was to poke holes in it. But we look at the Navy SEALs and they have a reflective process. We look at Pixar and they have a reflective process, right? So they have this term called plussing, which is similar to the yes and rule in improv, where you acknowledge something that's there and you might add to it and say, I see where you're going, here's where I might take it next. But they will watch film with a collective. They'll get trusted POVs to watch a piece of film, and they don't just tear it down. They might name what isn't working, but they'll start with an invitation of where they might go to try to work on it. They say something like, here's what I'm noticing. Here's what isn't working for me. Maybe go and explore this. And they offer them a playground to go and explore it instead of here is the solution. And when they hear it from multiple people, then they might trust it more. And when they have a direction to go in, I think it helps them focus. And I think that's also true with athletes. You know, I look at a team like a football team with a head coach that has Tell the Truth Mondays. And he's an NFL coach, but he used to be a college coach. And what he says is tape doesn't lie. What happens is the whole team will get together and watch, not on the same day they played, by the way. They don't come in right after the game, beat up and exhausted and depleted, having won, excited, or lost and depressed, and try to go back to work. They take a night, they go shower, they have a good meal, they go spend time with their family, they get a sleep, and then they come back to work to break down their tape. So for us, it's kind of weird that we have to watch our tapes so quickly after we make them and then send them off immediately and make sense of them, while we still might be in the soup of the flaws of it, or the genius, riding the high of what I loved, and how do I pick between all the great takes? And then also, you know, the idea of we need to make sense of the practicality of deciding right away. But I think later on, we can borrow from athletes and we can watch our tapes back with a critical eye and break down game film. So Kobe used to spend 5 hours breaking down 1.5 hour game. And he had very specific things he would look for. He would look for not just did he score, the result. You would look at process. Did I come out with energy? Where were my eyes at the time? What were my feet doing? What were they doing on the sideline during the timeout? So we need to discover for ourselves, if we want to take up this mantle, how do I break down my game tape later towards growth? This is one of the things that is only about time. When I first came out here, we were auditioning in a room and the decision makers were in the room. We would never see our audition again.
No.
And then it started to be where they would tape it and it would live somewhere else, but we wouldn't see it. Now we have the opportunity to see it. And so many actors I know are like, I don't want to watch my tape. Let somebody else decide for me. Too much to make that decision. And you know, there's a difference between using it towards the practicality of the audition itself. But what I'm suggesting is being able to use a critical eye to break down our tape and say, wait, were my eye lines showing up for me? Were they clear? Was the story clear?
Am I bored by all these? Now that I'm watching all of them, are they all one note?
Yeah.
Is every time I get a drama, am I just trying so hard to show how much I can cry? But it's just like, look at this actress cry for 2 minutes, as opposed to a story that we're getting and crying as a part of the story.
It's really painful to
it's
acknowledge,
really painful.
Right? Like, oh my God, have I been doing this for years?
And again, the defensive always comes in for me too, in my own experience. And you just have to ask yourself, is it working? And so if you've had, say, 20 auditions and you didn't get feedback in the sense of like, oh, you know, we're going to avail check you, we're going to pin you, you know, you're on the short list. If you maybe got one of those and that's not satisfying to you, or you got none of those and that's not satisfying to you, then you have to challenge yourself to reflect on what's not working. And then you have to find the solution of exactly what you're saying. How do I evaluate what's not working? And possibly, am I qualified to evaluate what's not working? And do I want just one person evaluating what's not working? Or do I want to check in with a few qualified people? Because every major athlete doesn't have a coach. They don't have a coach they go to. They have a few people, often several with different specialties. They might have a head coach, but then they have many people who have many different specialties working on the whole of them as a team, as a player. And what I love about what you said about Kobe is, because it is humble, the willingness to really refine is what mastery is.
Beautifully said.
But mastery is... it's a beast of a game. It's incredibly worth it, in my experience, but it requires consistent refinement.
Yeah, and I think that the people that are doing it, it's about the pursuit of mastery, right? It's not about the achievement of it.
Because you realize it's not an achievable thing.
There's no there. It's we can get our muscles in fine shape, and then if we stop exercising them, they atrophy. So mastery seems to be about process over results. And for those people listening, they sometimes might try to write the fifth draft with some part of their life. And there's an amazing book that's really simple called Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about the idea of like, let's say our focus is on my clothes to fit better. I want to feel more confident in my body. I want to lose weight, whatever the focus might be. So many people look at those results. They set their New Year's intentions around those results. But what he's really interested in is becoming a person who has a new habit. So what he says is like day one, perhaps we put on our workout clothes. That's what we do. Day two, we 1%. Put on our workout clothes and we go sit in the car for 5 minutes. Day three, we put on our clothes, we go sit in the car for 5 minutes, or we drive to the gym. We walk around for 5 minutes and we leave and come home. We don't even exercise. What we're doing is building the habit and the identity of I am someone who goes to the gym. We're not trying to get the results of the 3 pounds or the specific bicep measurement or whatever.
Or really like, I ate too much over the holidays. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. What is like death to anyone who's trying to get fit. They're like, I'm going to like go get it. And then they jog and then they do all these lunges and then they can't move the next day. Yeah. And it's immediately damaging to their spirit and to their body. And they're like, fuck it, that's too hard. As opposed to this 1% growth that you're talking about, 1% a day, that in doing that, you are sitting in the confident knowledge, which takes faith. It takes faith in yourself. It takes faith in the process that if you just move slowly in the direction that you're looking to go, just start the ball rolling, that you will gain the momentum that you're looking for. But because we are such like result-oriented, now, give it to me now, magnificent creatures, it does take a lot of faith and gentleness. Mm-hmm. And I find a lot more kindness, internal kindness to yourself and to others, because a lot of times that harshness towards you is all the stuff you've been giving everyone else for such a long time. Then now you point it back at yourself, right? So kindness to others. And I just also want to say for everyone, once you start working in this way, it gets easier to do it all the time. Mm-hmm. And like my experience is it just gets easier. Once I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give myself 20 minutes of this material before I start hating myself. Then that works. Yeah. And then I book, and then the process becomes more enjoyable. And so it's then easier for me to apply that to working out or to literally anything else. Is starting the successful experience of something like that allows all of it to have more confidence and faith in doing it across the board.
I really love the umbrella you just named for us, Audrey. The idea of faith and kindness towards ourselves being the umbrella under which we take these actions. And there's two things that I wanted to jump in and say, which is, what if we have to go slow to go fast? What if our habits are like a freeway that's well paved and a well-oiled machine, but our new things we're trying, where somebody says, I've tried that. Well, that path might be a dirt road until it gets worn, until it gets traveled, until we make some grooves on the record of our brain. And so we have to go slow to go fast. The other thing is there's an incredible book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. And there was a guy who was brought in to run a football team, and they were pretty terrible from top to bottom. But his focus was not just on the game. His focus was on the way people answered the phone over at the ticket sales and whether or not the players dressed a certain way on game day. And he talked about these tiny little things. Like John Wooden, the coach, the basketball coach for UCLA, would have these 5-star athletes, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, incredible players come play for UCLA. And the first thing he would teach them is how to put on their socks properly. So they were like, why are you doing that? And he's like, because if they get a blister, then they can't play in the second half and they're no good to me today or tomorrow in practice. So it's the little things that make a huge difference. And so I love the idea that if we take care of the intangibles, maybe it's not about rising and hustling and grinding. Maybe it's not about doing more work on the scene and overcooking our eggs today. Maybe it is around recuperation, rest, deep rest, so that it helps our memory. Maybe it is about nutrition and exercise or meditation and slowness. Maybe it is about addressing our nerves and channeling them and having a relationship to deep focus. And maybe these intangible things, when those are addressed, impact our craft, and maybe the results start to take care of themselves.
And not only that, but I just want to say experientially, the process becomes much more enjoyable. My last name is Moore. Like Audrey wants more. Like it's real. And so I get it. Like I get the impulse. I get in my blood, in my bones, the feeling of like, okay, I've identified a problem. Let's fix it. Let's fix it now. Go, 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 go. And that sort of rushing. And I have really had to have a lot of self-control in the slowing down, in the reflection, and in that process. But in so doing, it does become more enjoyable. And what you're talking about, which I'm talking about in this season, is also like people who talk about grit and success and those sorts of things, mastery. When you just do the little things, you get a little more confidence, and it makes the process more enjoyable. So if you're like, I'm just going to put on my workout clothes, then you're like, you know what? Yay for me. And then I'm just going to sit in my car for 5 minutes. Yay for me. And I'm going to drive to the place and I'm going to come back home. Yay for me. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to come back home. Yay for me. So your feeling about it and your experience of it feels victorious. And I know you know about this because we've talked about it, that there is literally a part in the brain called the winner's part of the brain. They've done several experiments where they've taken people who feel like losers And then people that they just tell them, like, you're a winner, like, you win, you're awesome, you just win, you just like win all the time. And the people who just have lit up the part of their brain that is like the winner's part of the brain, they do better. And that it does have a compounding effect. Like, we don't have sports psychiatrists and psychologists for funsies. They have it because they've recognized that the mental game is a huge part of the success.
Yeah, it's really nice that we can also borrow from sport. Because like you said, we're not a $1 billion franchise necessarily yet. So we don't have people studying us to try to maximize our return. What I love about what you're saying is the yay is celebrating each step. And that's not fluffy. There's a way of linking the reward center of our brain to effort and not result. And that's a really important distinction, because then, like you said, we do fall in love with the process. We do have the dopamine hit because we're celebrating the step, and we're not waiting for those big spikes, which may not come for a while before we can celebrate.
I just want to also point out for everyone, because we're talking a lot about resilience on this season. And if you are a person who is most people pursuing this career, that you are limited in time, energy, and money. And if you just look at what you have and you're like, you know what, I have to have a job because I have to pay rent. So I'm going to have 30 to 40 hours of my week is going to be sucked up by something else. I'm going to get the money that I'm going to get, and it's not enough for me to invest $2,000 a month into my career. And then because of this job and because of the things I'm putting into the career, I'm tapped out on energy. That I just would love for everyone to surrender to the fact that it is going to go slower, perhaps, than you would like it to be. And that's just fucking math. And in the math, how are you going to make the process that perhaps is 1% a day because of the cards you got handed in life that has restricted your time and energy and money in terms of what you can invest into the growth of this career over time? That in order for you to have the 1% a day, not just be moving in the right direction, but be enjoyable so that you can get the resilience, so that when you get the auditions, you have systems in place that truly this feeling you started with of like, ugh, is so real. It is so real, especially now that we're all at home, and especially now they're asking us all to do it in front of our blank walls where kids and dogs and fire trucks and neighbors and all of the things are now a part of it. And so how can you nurture that resilience so that the passion that it takes to continue to operate in Kobe level, to operate in Olympic level, is like the fuel that keeps you going?
Yeah, I'm hearing, how do we sustain over time? And I really like this financial method and model and metaphor of compounding interest, because if you just think about, if I keep adding to my account and my account is growing, it will start to compound and grow even more beyond just adding like a few cents a day. There's also the law of, compounding interest. Now, let's talk actually about grit and resiliency for a moment, because I don't know if people know the definition of grit, but according to Angela Duckworth, who is the UPenn professor who wrote the book on grit, she calls it passion and perseverance over time. Passion and perseverance over time. So you were talking about persevering, right? How do we persevere? The idea of passion, this is our passion. And the over time part means slow down. Like, this is going to take a bit in order to be gritty. And the two things that seem to stand out from the science and the research is, number one, we have to do hard things. Like, let's just accept that we may have to do hard things and that we can do hard things. That allows us to know we can bounce back. We've lived through those things, and we can tell ourselves through self-talk, we can do hard things. The other one is that optimism is at the center of grit. Optimism, it doesn't mean the idea of just blindly saying everything's going to work out at all costs. But to me, the optimism is connected to hope that I'm making progress. So if I'm ignoring all the little things in favor of the result and the big things, I'm not giving myself the fuel you just talked about to get me to go back out there tomorrow. We need to celebrate these little victories, and we need to acknowledge what's working within ourselves and not wait for other people to just tell us. And those are things that don't cost us anything but our energy and our time.
And have incredible compounding interest.
That's it.
And when you said passion and perseverance over time, if I frame that in acting, it's like passion and perseverance over time with the craft and the pursuit of the acting profession. I just want to say to everyone, like, welcome to your life's work. It is literally your life's work. It's not this week. It's not 2022, New Year, New You. It's not any of that. It is the relationship you will have with this work and this craft and this business for as long as you choose to have it. Right. And for some people, they hear, welcome to your life's work. And their honest reaction, and if this is you, take a look at it. They're like, and truthfully, that may be an indication that you should think about something else, honestly. And also, it's okay to have a few things in your lifetime that are your life's work. Yeah. And if you spent 20 years pursuing this craft and this business and the realization like, this is it, this is your life's work, feels devastating to you, then maybe there's another chapter for you, as there is for so many, where there's something else that passion plus perseverance over time sounds exciting, sounds joyous, sounds interesting and fun. And so maybe, even if it's not leaving this, but it's expanding to something else, that's something that you should take a look at.
I love that, Audrey. Especially this time of year. It almost doesn't matter. You can do it at your birthday. You can do it at the New Year. You can do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know, spring cleaning. But I think that you used this word earlier that I think is so beautiful, which is becoming. What if our life's work is the art of becoming? And so for me, the second word in there, the second underpinning is better versions of ourselves, being better so we can do better. And what I really hear in that invitation, the challenging one that you just offered, the gauntlet you threw down, is we may have to dissolve the form that we thought our profession would look like, or the exact form it would take.
Yes.
So what if we distill it into its essence? The same thing is true with people that say, I don't know what to be working on. Well, it doesn't have to come when you have an audition. Let's say your challenge is, I get thrown off in the midst of my audition. I get distracted. I get pulled out. My focus goes to the fire truck. My focus goes to the lines. My focus comes away from this present moment. Then maybe the lonely work is about training on a daily basis, how to be more present, how to have deep focus, a little bit longer than before. 3 breaths instead of 2. 2 minutes instead of 1. How do I make that my life's work? Because that will show up for me on game day. Why would I treat these moments differently? There's a lot of good sports science that says if we treat big moments differently than the way we treat day-to-day moments, that will increase the amount of pressure we feel when the lights switch on and it's now time to go. Because we think we have to do something different than we know how to do. And so if we are treating every moment as if it's a big moment, and we recognize what's getting in the way of our authenticity and our presence and our fullness and our confidence, then if we address those things on a day-to-day basis in little ways, then the big day will just be a Tuesday.
It's so much of what I talk about. It's why I have self-tape practice as an important part of my life, and I think for everyone else's life who wants to pursue this. And I always say, like, if you want to be a professional Olympic marathon runner, then you're not going to wait until you have the big runs to run. Nobody would ever do that. No one would ever do that. And you wouldn't just like run in a group sometimes 2 times a week for like 4 hours. With, you know, really like maybe 20 minutes of you actually doing the running. And then you just watch everyone else run. You would run every day because the goal is that clear and that tangible. Once we have disintegrated and analyzed what the delusion is really protecting, which is this denial that working improperly is just going to yield results. Yeah. While also understanding that we all have the circumstances we have to work as properly as we can. And some people have more resources than other people of anything, of any number of those things. And you have to use the resources you have available to you as wisely as you can and nurture yourself along the way so the whole process has this resilience, has this passion plus perseverance over time. I love it. This was such a wonderful conversation. I want to wrap with my 5 questions. Please. I know you're a busy man. But wait, Joe. Wait. You mad genius, you. I have to interrupt you.
Help me. I need some help.
And now it's time for listener questions.
I'm so scared.
This listener question is brought to you by Greg Saffel at singinglessonslosangeles.com. That's singinglessonslosangeles.com. You guys, you got to work on your body and your voice. You know that that's true. Everyone in New York and Los Angeles is like, I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to go do yoga. I'm going to go do all of the meditation. You guys are doing all the things. And then it's like, have you taken voice class? Everyone's like, no, I have not. We have to. We have to work our bodies and our voice. The actor's instrument is body and voice. So if you are an actor who has not taken a voice class in your life, let me tell you, just take the first step, take one lesson, and just see how it goes. If you're a person who really feels like you are stuck vocally and you don't have full vocal expression, or if you're getting notes in acting class, teachers are like, you need to go to voice class, and you're like, it sounds really scary and overwhelming. It does sound scary and overwhelming, but Greg is so profoundly fantastic at what he does. He's affordable, he's nurturing, he is available in person and virtually. Greg Saffel, singinglessonslosangeles.com.
Hi, Audrey. My name is Steve. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I have recently transitioned to acting, like maybe 6 or 7 months in. So I'm brand new, like level 1, barely. My question is this. I'm taking classes currently. I've taken a few improv, commercial techniques, voiceover. I'm trying to just get a lot of various experiences, but I want to know, first of all, what do you feel like are the core absolute classes that every actor needs to take in order to have the very basic knowledge they need? And the second part of my question is, how can you be certain that a school offering acting classes is reputable and worth your hard-earned money? I do not mind spending money on acting education. I think it's hugely beneficial and very important to do, but I also want to be sure that as I explore new classes, new instructors, new schools, that I am going to be investing wisely. Thank you so much for any advice you can give, and keep doing what you're doing. Love your podcast, love your advocacy for actors, and I just wish you all the best in the world. Thanks so much.
Steve, I love this question. This is a really great question. So for what it's worth, you're not going to like the answer of the 2 classes that I think are absolutely essential to people getting into acting, because it's actually not an acting class. I think the 2 most essential fundamental things that actors need is they need to be in a voice class, and they need to be ideally in some sort of movement class. Movement for actors is great. That's not always available everywhere, but acting is so much great acting. An actor that's believable, that feels like they're honest and authentic in whatever the situation is, being able to like receive an impulse from somebody that's acting with you and then have your body get that impulse and then give back an impulse. That has so much to do, has everything to do with body and voice. And it is hard to explain to somebody who hasn't had that training why it's so important, but I can tell you for certain that that stiffness that you see in an actor, when you see an actor who's maybe green, if you're like in an acting class and you're watching an actor and they just don't quite feel comfortable when they're acting, and they don't sound comfortable when they're acting, and not unlike, and this is my acting uncomfortableness way, but like they just kind of seem not dropped in, is a word that is often used in acting. That's really a voice and a movement thing. So moving your body in ways that your body is not used to moving is a really big part of how you can inhabit different impulses physically. You might get a physical impulse that you yourself as a person would never behave this way, but the character would. The character is going to express themselves this way. Maybe you're a person who doesn't really express, say, sexuality a lot, but you have a character that maybe even is a little flirty, and it might make you uncomfortable in your body to do a character like that. And having confidence in your body and the expressiveness of your body is a huge part of what helps an actor be fully expressive and available, even if it's small, even if it's minute. Especially, I have to say, working with a camera, you guys, working with a camera, for everyone who knows, working with a camera is just dance. You are literally dancing. The camera is following you. They're catching shots. They have an awareness of you. You have an awareness of them. So you have this blocking of, how do I enter the room, get around the couch, grab the cup of water, fill it with water, then drink the water, then turn around so the camera's catching this side of my face, and talk to my scene partner and act and have my lines and be natural at the same time. I can tell you from full thousands experience, I'm so grateful for a movement class and all of the movement training I did for years and years and years, because it is extremely technical, that work, when you get in front of the camera. It's definitely true for stage as well, but for camera, it is essential. You are dancing with the camera operator. Voice work, same deal. You know, having a voice teacher that can help you fully express yourself vocally is everything. You know, conservatories don't do voice and movement training just for like funsies. It is an essential part, because that's our instrument. Our instrument is our body and our voice. So scene study, essential. Understanding scripts, essential. Knowing genre is essential. All that is essential. But at the end of the day, if you don't have like an instrument that you can count on, if your instrument can't handle the capacity of crying for 8 hours, if your instrument vocally can't handle doing the take after take after take after take of you raging and yelling at somebody, if you can't speak the next day because you've blown out your vocal cords, if you don't know how to speak softly, but also still with some projection so that people can hear you. When you watch any of the master classes, I loved Helen Mirren's master class, and she said so brilliantly, the importance of acting class, she was like, I could go back and forth about that. Like, is it essential? I'm not sure. She was like, but voice class is what changes an actor. And I just remember thinking like, fuck yeah, Helen, you're right. So that, now, how do you know if somebody's reputable? What a great question. I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like, how do you know if an agent is reputable? I mean, you know, don't have them steal from you. That would be great. But finding a good acting teacher and a good whatever teacher, voice or movement or whatever, it's personal. And then how long you stay there, it's a personal journey. A lot of the best classes and the best teachers, you can't even access them. They have their students teaching you. And it is very hard, because a class that might really launch one actor may do nothing for another actor. And at different parts of my training process, different classes were valuable for different reasons. So, reputation, you can go on reputation, but also if you go into an acting class and you leave the acting class and you're crying all the time, that might also be really great because maybe you're really working through a block that you need to work through. And instead of bouncing out and going back to what's comfortable, maybe you really need to stay with that class and you need to really take the lesson, take the note, get through that block. Or maybe that teacher is an asshole and they can go fuck themselves. It's just hard. It's a complicated question to answer sort of in a broad, sweeping generalization. I will say voice and movement, definitely do it.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Okay, so tell everyone social media, websites that they should check out, all of the things.
Sure. So, find @me_Joe_Towne on Instagram, on Twitter. If you want to holler at me, holler @me_Joe_Towne. If you'd like to know about the performer's mindset, which is this cross-training perspective and this idea of how do we address the pressures and challenges facing the modern actor, that's theperformersmindset.com. It also is the Performer's Mindset on Instagram, where we offer these tips and tools. And I think that's where my conversations, the podcast you alluded to as the Better Podcast, is being hosted as well. So you can find that on there.
Great guests on the Better Podcast, you guys. He's got literally just a slew, from athletes to actors to producers to psychiatrists, just a really wonderful group of all various kinds of people who are experts in their own right and all have valuable things to offer to your own perspective. Really great.
Thanks.
Great. And then do you have any questions for me?
So many. Oh my God.
Oh God, I love.
One, what's something, Audrey, that you may do better than most people?
I think I'm learning a lot about, I started researching optimism during the pandemic, and I learned that people have an optimist set point. So for some people, optimism comes more naturally. And for some people, it's sort of maybe at a lower set point. So they have to work hard to grow it. And I do think that I have a naturally high optimism set
Love
point.
it. And what's one thing that you're working to get better at?
One thing I'm definitely working to get better at is mastery. It's exactly what you said about iron sharpens iron, this thing that I experience as I continue to level up, where I'm not just competing with execution. I'm competing now with relationships. And in order for me to cut through like a sharp sword in a piece, when somebody might also have a relationship with a creative, how sharp that has to be, how artful and curated that has to be, I think, in order to cut through. I can see how serious that is. And I'm excited to continue to sharpen.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing those with me.
Of course. Thank you for asking. Okay. What is the best part about, we'll just say, the industry for you?
The best part of the industry, two things come to mind. One is that we have so many opportunities and forms to play in. You know, we do short form. You know, I think I'm watching what people are doing to create on TikTok. And like how this opportunity didn't exist a few years ago. So we have so many opportunities to tell stories. And if that's what we do, we have so many opportunities to express ourselves and explore and be creative. The other thing is that we can't really escape from ourselves. You mentioned this earlier. It's almost like the Mike Brady thing, like wherever you go, there you are.
Right. Yes. Right.
So whatever playground we find ourselves in, the lessons are there and the successes are there. And if we put on the glasses and have the eyes to see it, I'm really excited for what our job is as the mantle holders to hold up a mirror to society and show it to itself. So it starts with us.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, we set the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the hardest part about this business for you?
I think some of the systems that we're fighting against, I don't think that's disconnected from the greater society as a whole. I think that our industry is a microcosm in terms of the fights for justice, the fights for racial justice, the fights for equality in all forms and pay scale, the idea of limited time and resources, and that those who have it versus those people who don't have it. I think the idea that we use people like batteries is my biggest complaint. And you see that unions are standing up like IATSE, and you see that in London, they're fighting to limit the amount that we can be treated like batteries in terms of turning things around to fight for our rights. So I think the idea of treating each other a little bit better may require checking our systems and not just taking on the burden ourselves and convincing ourselves that we're crazy because we're overloaded with all these requests and we're overloaded with the short time frames. And I think we, together with our casting friends and our director and producer friends, may need to try things differently than we have before. And I'm curious to know what that could look like, whether it starts with looking at French hours or what they do in other cultures, or whether we have to reimagine the systems and really start from scratch in some areas.
I love that. And if that sounds exciting to everyone, I will see you at another union meeting. I will be there. That's how these conversations go. And don't just know about your union, know about all of our sister unions that are a part of this, because I just love that using people as batteries. That is just so real. And how we feel locked in our places, doing self-tapes, getting 36 hours to do 14 pages, knowing they're probably only going to watch the first 40 seconds at most, by far most. And when we talk about optimism, it's very challenging to remain optimistic, knowing they may have seen 10 to 500 tapes and only watched the first 12 seconds of most of them and then garnered their final 7. That's very hard to remain optimistic.
In the short term, in the short term, right? So if flashback to what Kobe realized, I'm not going to win this game today. You guys are bigger than me. I'm not going to win this game today.
Yes. Yeah.
So what if the self-tape is about the 1% I'm trying to get better on this self-tape and what I'm going to learn and grow from, even though I need to pay my bills, even though I need insurance, even though I want to make progress in my bookings. There's an opportunity there too.
Absolutely. I love that. What do you wish somebody had managed to teach you or get you to understand when you were just a wee babe entering this business for the first time?
Yeah, I think I had a delusion about perfectionism. I heard stories about Warren Beatty and Robert De Niro and 70 takes, and the idea of like, okay, there is the perfect take out there. And if I just keep whittling away the marble, I will reveal David, the statue underneath it. I think that it took me until I was in the editing room of a movie that I had directed, and I was looking for choices to realize that if I just had 5 of the same take and that perfect take I was seeking, it didn't help me in the collaborative process. So the invitation for me since has been about excellence, which includes messiness and sloppiness and errors and mistakes, but authenticity and going for it and passion and commitment. I hear it sitting in the room with deciders when they watch tapes. I see it when I'm watching a tape too. I would much rather send the one with the little flaw that shows everything else that's wonderful than try to send the perfect tape that falls somewhere in that safe serve in tennis, just getting it over the net.
Yes. I love that. I love that. What does success look like to you?
I love the idea that success is about growth. So after I'm done, I hope that I have a victory or a learning or both. So the idea is that what I reflect for are those two things. And I do it when I'm in the safety of my own home because I want to be able to do it on set in between takes. I want to own something that went well to continue my confidence and acknowledge what I might want to lean into or play with or say, I've got that now. But I also want to figure out, okay, what might I do differently given another take? So I got to learn something about what I did. So to me, it's a celebration of growth. And the idea of that growth comes from a victory, like, okay, I can own that thing, celebrate that little step, and learn something towards next time.
What you're saying is enjoying the process.
Yeah, it helps me enjoy the process. because I love the feeling of improvement. It's the thing that makes me feel like I can go back out there tomorrow and do this again.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful thing to understand in life is like what makes you excited about life. And for some people, it is learning. For some people, it is clarity. For some people, it's a feeling of enthusiasm. For some people, it's conquering, you know, like whatever it is, because I just find it to make it all a lot more navigatable. Is that
navigatable?
Whatever that one is. Yeah, I love that. Okay, last question is mildly interesting. This can be a product, something you like, something you've read, something that you learned that you just think is like mildly interesting. It could be incredibly interesting. You're not limited to mild. For our guest today.
For me, a revolutionary tool has been helping sleep. And the sleep science and leaning into sleep has improved every part of my life. So I'm not proud. I wear an eye mask to block out light. And
I do.
That eye mask, for me, the ones that have like the holes carved out and fits really well, it has really helped me in rooms that, you know, the light gets in. So I'm the guy who will block out where the fan is or where the alarm clock would be or the cracks in the curtain. Because in our family, we value as much sleep as we need, not as much as we can get, because that might indicate other things, but getting the sleep we need.
As you need. Yeah. I love that. Well, listen, this was such a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to air it. I think it's going to have a really soothing impact on the listeners, and everyone will start to, I hope, through hearing this, have a sense of what I'm really trying to do here, which is like a better understanding of the game that's being played and how to best compete individually in that game. And I think that this will bring a lot of clarity to a lot of people. So thank you so much for reaching out.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And it's my hope that if it touches anyone in terms of their own self-confidence, this idea of like us self-trusting even a little bit more, then I think we will have had a really successful conversation today.
Next week on Audrey Helps Actors, we have finally the impeccable, the incredible conversation with Lee Hall. We are talking about radical acceptance, you guys. Next week's episode is called Radical Acceptance. It's radical. It's about accepting the actual career that you have signed up for, and what support do you need emotionally, spiritually, life-wise, financially, to support the actual structure that you individually are setting up with your career. This is Lee Hall. She's an incredible therapist. She was a fantastic working actress for many years, so she deeply understands all of the neuroses and the trauma and the rejection and the fatigue and the high highs and the low lows and the magic of being an actor. And as a therapist, she now understands from her new perspective how an actor might set themselves up mentally, emotionally, spiritually for the best success and experience of a career, so that your experience of the career is a valued one, is a valuable one, is an enjoyable one, is an exciting one, is a one full of passion and love. I love Lee. I love you, Lee. So you guys are going to love this episode. Thanks so much to Joe Towne, Towne, Towne with an E. I am so excited for you, Joe. I'm so glad that we got together to record this episode. I know it was really inspiring to so many, and it was inspiring to me. So thank you so much for your time. I honor you, and I'm so grateful for it. This episode was mixed and mastered by Thomas Hank Snodgrass, produced by Jesse Lumen, still so handsome, everyone. It's been a hard couple years, and I have to say, he's managed to get even handsomer. This episode was edited by Taylor Martirana. Taylor! Who did a fantastic job on this edit. Show music by Ari De Niro and theme song by Alok Mehta and 108 Hill. All right, everyone. Don't forget your towel.